Welcome to the Squarebase Show with me, Rob, and your host, Mr. Val Heffelfinger. In this video, we are going to be taking a look at some event results and talking about the selling out of Elise Duchard. Join us on this party bus.
Elise Duchard did not sell out, Rob. She bought in.
She bought in. She definitely did. I agree. That was a big deal. Big deal this weekend. Lots has happened, but the details are pretty thin on so it's going to be a lot of supposition in this show today. So please do join us. Hopefully this is a fun and engaging show, because it doesn't have the main focus of a deep dive, which
Wild speculation.
But that's next week, right?
Speculating.
That's next week.
Next week is more of a deep dive?
More of a deep dive. Yeah, we're going to do... more of a deep dive. Yeah, we're going to be doing
like a double deep dive, maybe.
Yeah, potentially. It depends when we've got the time, because we've got stats, which is interesting, and we'll kick off with that. But before we do any of that, and thank you for joining us live, and thank you for also watching us back, can we...
Tune in next week for a better researched and in-depth show. This is just what you come. This is gonna be old-fashioned Square-based, vamping.
Potentially. I think there's some really good information out there, and I think this is a nice breather episode, is what I'm gonna say, because it's been pretty hectic, but more hectic than I realized, and then I want to know how the community feels, like a little bit of a catch-up with what's happening out there, because it's quite interesting, and Rob in the chat, who does my stats, he'll be able to point out the fact that this is the first month where we can start seeing events kicking off, really, really starting to amp up, and then there's definitely more coming up in the future. But even the biggest events, because we're going to talk about Warhammer World, even the biggest events are still at the beginning event stage. So it feels like we're really far in, but because of the production matter and other stuff, we're not. But we'll talk about that in a bit. How have you been? What have you been up to? How's things?
Well, last week, not very Warhammer heavy. Was in San Francisco this past weekend for a delightful sales conference with my lovely significant other, and aside from that, just did some good reading on the plane, and I don't know, it's been a pretty low key week for me, to be honest with you. Aside from obviously flying to a different country, but what about you?
It's been a pretty hectic week. The biggest thing, I guess, that happened outside of like regularly making videos, I ran an event this weekend. It was Age of Sigmar. Apologies, Squarebase fans, but it was really fun, especially because we're at the end of the Age of Sigmar 3 cycle, so a lot of people are like, that's it for me now. Quite interesting, like I said last time, a lot of people being like, that's the end of Age of Sigmar 3 now till 4th, I'm going to get onto Old World for a couple of months, which is kind of fun. So are they going to be back? Who knows? So
you're out of crack cocaine? All right, I'll try heroin.
I'll do it. Okay. So yeah, that was really interesting. But the biggest thing that happened for me in the past week, I guess, I mean the event was a pretty big deal, was I went to a manufacturing trade show on Thursday last week. Which was like, it was heavy manufacturing, so like milling machines, big. This was like a business to business industrial.
How to scale production and shit. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, like, and big machinery. Like, it was kind of funny. I was like, who's just randomly walking through a trade show and be like, yes, a turbine for my submarine. This is where I'll get it.
Obviously, supervillains.
But the one thing about that that was really cool is there is a whole
lot of like very clearly North Korean guys walking around like, hey.
Yeah, there was an additive manufacturing section, which is obviously effectively what 3D printing is. And these are all machines way outside of my price range. But what was really cool about that was we kind of got to see what the future technology would look like. And there was some insane stuff. Probably the most insane thing we saw was a machine. It cost like 80 to 100K, and it printed full color prints in single parts in different materials. And when I say and I was obviously with Louise, and she was showing off her like new pirate goblin that she's done for Rascal Town, which is on roguehobbies.com. Go check it out. And then they were basically saying that they could print that with the same fidelity as her paint job on a 3D sculpt. And I was like gobsmacked. And they were like, I can't begin to tell you how realistic the stuff that was being printed was. It was insane.
I've seen, because the thing is, I've seen some color resin prints before, and like they weren't ready for prime time yet.
These were ready. These were ready for prime time.
That was like 10 minutes ago. So yeah, obviously now it's better than everything. Great. So I guess that plus AI, and Louise is just sleeping really easily at night. That's great.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So it was super interesting. There was obviously like some another really cool thing was a massive, like unable to get like talking garage size printer, absolutely massive, but it was printing. They almost look like Warhammer boards. They're obviously meant for architecture, but they had they were printing out like landscapes with buildings on. So someone would be like, okay, there's your pitch of land where you're going to build a new housing development or something, and then you would click go and it would print what it would look like, so you could like show an investor or something like that. And it was just doing these whole pieces. But I was like, dude, you could just 3D print. Like, I'm like, okay, take the coolest old world story I can think of, design it in, design it as a map, click go, 3D print the map, and then start playing, which is really hot. It was super fun. So that's the biggest thing I've done in the past week, I guess, apart from running events and making videos.
I particularly love that, like, this is like the cutting edge of like machining and industrial technology, and you're just walking around being like, you can make minis with this.
Well, that was the amazing thing. Is no one there had any real clue about the minis industry at all. It was all for like dentistry or like manufacturing stuff, and none of it. Like, there was one guy I was talking to, and he was showing me around all these parts, and I was like, because it was really sweet. I was like, what? They were like, what's your budget? I was like, 0. Like, we're an incredibly small company, and they were like, he's like, I sell stuff to aerospace companies. I'm like, cool. That's cool. That's cool.
Aerospace. Now, what's that about then?
Are they a small business too? Have they got free fellas? But yeah, so they didn't really know about it. Although we did find the business that sells Games Workshop their 3D printers, which is interesting.
Ooh. Ooh.
So we now know which 3D printers Games Workshop have. No, it's not. Although they're not that expensive. Like, I think the printers that we were talking about were like, in the tens of thousands, but not like hundreds of thousands category. So I thought it was interesting.
I mean, also, I do wonder, like, at this point, depending on what your use case is, like, how much, because like this happened in computing, but in like the 70s, essentially, you had mainframe computing, these like massive building-sized computers that would have, kilobytes of computing power, and then the microprocessor becomes invented, and it's a toy, right? Like, because it's a very unserious looking thing. It's tiny, and really it's driven by enthusiasts. That's why like guys like Jobs and the other guy, Wozniak, they build their first Apple computer in a garage because it was literally a hobbyist enterprise, and ultimately that becomes the market, because the big guys, they want to sell the $100,000 machine. They don't want to sell $100,000 machines. They want to, they're in a very different snack bracket. So it's possible for things like the tiny printers to do just as good of a job as the big guys at a certain point. Not saying that's the case when you're 3D printing full color and all that kind of stuff, but it is interesting how fast, especially now, like consumer stuff can catch up to that sort of industrial edge, that sort of military/industrial grade stuff. The gap just isn't as wide as it maybe once was in a lot of industries.
I mean, it's true for things like phones, right? Like, many modern adverts that you'll see on TV or even like at the cinema or something are shot on iPhones, just because they just make so many technologies so high. I have a question for you, because I think we've maybe covered this in previous shows, but I don't think we've ever covered this in detail. How do you feel about 3D printed minis at events in the old world, explicitly? And I guess that's the same question for everyone below, because I think everyone has approached the approaches to the old world have been crazy, in my opinion, because I've seen people be like, I only want the old minis, and then some people are like, I'm super excited about finding some updated minis. Like, where do you how do you sit? Because you're a bit of an old world, like old mini fan.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not an ideologue about it. There's certain ranges I absolutely do love, and like even right now, I'm like super torn about what to do with the Nomad army, because we'll maybe look at them a little bit later. But there's a line of 3D printed stuff that I really love, and I genuinely already have quite a bit of the old GW sort of like Boor Boys and Wolf Riders and stuff. So it's like I'm actually considering selling those guys and replacing them. So yeah, like obviously I'm a big fan of 3D sculpted stuff. I'm a believer that like you should get what you think looks the best. I do think though there's a level of verisimilitude, i.e. the things that you 3D print and select. I do like it when they are things that fit in universe, both scale wise and theme wise. But even then, I love seeing the creativity of like different ideas and things that people come up with to inspire their armies. And so far, I haven't been pulled out of my my suspension of disbelief, or my immersion has not been affected by anyone's 3D printing model choices. For the most part, I just see stuff and I'm like, whoa, where'd that come from? What's that? That's so cool. And if you're a lover of minis, going out and seeing what people are coming up with and creating, you're going to see stuff that you've never seen before, because it's just ancient Citadel. Like people are bringing out some really like genuinely old Hammer stuff, or it might be things that are brand new, came off a 3D printer. So I'm all for 3D printing, but I'm also mostly for quality armies that people put a lot of affection and love into. That's what I'm down for.
I think it's cool. I'd love to know what everyone else's thoughts are. I mean, lots of people in the chat have got their opinions on it as well. I think it's incredibly commonly accepted by the old world community, which is cool. We again kind of like as a I guess a filler episode, but I guess more as a stopgap episode, take a breath. Old world releases, everyone's reading the rules, getting stuff ready, getting models. And it really does feel like a lot of people have like not been the purists that I thought that they would be. Lots of people have been super excited about getting, like my friend Andy, runs a YouTube channel called Andy2D6, super nice guy.
Yeah.
He has been doing a classic old dwarf army, and he's like, oh, I really need to do gyrocopter for my army. I'm like, oh, they just get one. He's like, no, I need an old one. Like he's got like this old dwarf army from like I don't even know when. It's all on green bases, and I played against Andy. His army, like he literally pulled out of an old, like one of those old plastic Citadel cases, the old Citadel briefcase. But yeah, I know exactly the gyrocopter he needs, and it's not even the 6th edition one. It's like it's super old school, but that will fit his theme and his army. I think that's really what matters. Like, is it something that sings to you? And there's like lots of things. Something we said in the run up to Old World, or at least I definitely said a bunch in the run up to Old World, is that like Games Workshop is the only place that makes Warhammer, but they're not the only people who make miniatures. And I think that's really important. I think for people to like embrace and love and understand, because it's totally okay for other companies to make miniatures that can be used in different games. There's nothing illegal about this. There's nothing, it's actually the only reason we don't think that's something that's cool or might be taboo is literally because we've been not brainwashed, but conditioned to only accept a very specific model set. Whereas I think because the foundation of Old World is people who've had to make do, if they've been enjoying Rank and Flank and older versions of fantasy, they've had to make do with secondhand models or 3D printed models or third-party models for almost a decade, and also are just sort of used to that being the status quo. So, and you can't even buy the real shit if you want to most of the time. So yeah, I think it's awesome that people are overcoming that hurdle and just finding ways to get armies that they love and like on the table. I think that's awesome. Well, that brings us to a nice segue to this weekend, where I think in under a minute.
Tiny Tootsie's podcast.
Yeah, the Tiny Tootsie podcast coming soon from the network is Lady Elise Duchard went on sale and sold out under a minute, which is kind of wild because you would have thought, I guess by the time they'd assigned stock for this release, the Old World, this was probably even before they launched the Old World, but at this point, you've got to know just how popular this is going to be. And yeah, a minute is a crazy time frame for this to sell out in, right?
Well, we don't know. They could have had a couple hundred of them. You never know how many actually existed. But yeah, no, that is that is like a pair of nice Nike sneakers kind of demand. Also, 36 pounds, basically free. Um, come on, who couldn't afford to buy this? Yeah, the production stuff is interesting. I think that they also leaned into like less scalable forms of production. So like the Forge World models and resin in general is not going to be able to punch out nearly as much at nearly the pace of an injection molded plastic sprue. That's just a thing. Like that is going to be a much faster, higher volume rate of production. Same thing as pewter miniatures and things like that. I'm sure those do not come off the assembly line or like the the manufacturing floor nearly as quick as a sprue can. So the game relies on a lot of stuff that I think was maybe selected because kind of unused capacity. Forge World, or what do they call them now? Advanced
kits.
Advanced kits, yeah, advanced kits and metal minis. That's production capacity, probably not being used much, because a lot of games have moved away from those materials, obviously. But at the same time, if it needs to be produced at the level of a game that's actually popular, maybe is going to fall down a little bit, which is maybe what we've seen.
Yeah, I think what's super interesting is just how popular this was. We've also got some more info in the chat from Dave, for Dave, who was at the Games. We're going to talk about the Games Workshop event because they had an Old World event at Warhammer World this weekend in Nottingham. It was a 60-player event with 200 people on the wait list. 200. I know you can ask a bunch of questions. Why was the capacity only 60 if they had 200 people? It's because I happened to speak to someone at the company recently, and they just don't have the terrain yet for the Old World, because they previously, quite hilariously, when the American events team started to set up and start running events a couple of years ago, Warhammer World.
100% true.
This is 100% a fact, true story. They sent all of their old terrain kits, which would have been all of their Warhammer Fantasy Battle terrain kits, over to the USA. And then now the Old World released, and they were like, God damn it.
So you know how I know this is true is because I during the initial US Open, I was the streamer. I was the guy running the stream, and I was just getting into fantasy at the time. And I went waltzing through the AOS area, and every single table had like a the old manor building, the fortified manor. They had Citadel Woods, and I walked up to old Mikey Brandt, and I was like, every one of those tables has like $1,500 worth of eBay terrain on it, right? Like every single thing on there was like so expensive if you wanted to buy it. So I definitely thought very hard about shoving a bunch of it in my backpack.
Yeah. Also,
I didn't. But it wasn't Warhammer Fest. It was the US Open.
That was in the US. We also have from someone who was working at Games Workshop at the time that they also binned a load as they were the person doing it. So like. The sheer level of industry insider information that's available at this particular point is wild. Like I was like, oh, maybe we don't know that much, but actually, like, that's just an incredible data set that we just did. 200 people on the wait list for a 60-person event where they couldn't have terrain because it was sent to the USA, all binned, all revealed live on Square Based. There you go.
Also, like, why not just use AOS terrain? Like, what's wrong with that? Like, I mean, it doesn't look that off. If they wanted to, that just seems strange.
Well, who knows? Like, I don't mind Warhammer World being purist about it, I guess. Like, if anything, it's like, sure, we only have 30 tables worth of decent terrain for you to play the whole world. That's all we can do. And I actually really respect that. I think that actually shows some sort of, like, love and attention to the hobby that I would want Games Workshop and Warhammer World to showcase, in my opinion.
Also, I'm curious to know if it was good terrain on the 30 tables that they had. But Well, I guess we'll find out. Were they playing on Realm of Battle boards?
They weren't. They were playing on mats. But I would say, and this is important, I know the event organizer, and they try really, really hard. So I'm a big fan of them because Warhammer World events used to suck. But now the events themselves don't suck. Just the space sucks to play in. Like low tables, terrible chairs. It's a weekend, so it's packed, so you can't get to the bar. Anyway, Elites du Shard sold out, incredibly popular. This also adds on to something you and me have been saying loads, in that the old world is massive, continuing to grow. So if the initial sales spike was just a bunch of people returning to the hobby and just being like, that's what I want, I'm going to get into it, and it was done. But no, the releases keep continuing to sell out, keep continuing to do really well. So I would argue that we are in continual growth for the hobby, and I think a lot of people are just waiting for their army to come out. You know, we're waiting for dwarfs, we're waiting for some of those others. And next week, when we do like the meta-analysis of the events that we've seen, because we do have one from the Warhammer World event as well, which is the largest event to date, even though it's 1,500 people. The armies that were available, that were popular, were because those models were available. For instance, Warriors of Chaos. So, you know, I think the game is not only just really healthy, I think it's growing, bud. That's what I think.
I mean, we see it even in our own numbers. Like I was doing a little bit of a dashboard analytics YouTube dive, because I after the spike, we had some pretty big vids in January, and I thought to myself, well, this is tremendously unsustainable. There's no way. I joked that I only get out of bed for 10,000 views, and I've continuously been gotten out of bed by this show. I'm shocked at how sticky the interest has been. It's really, really cool, and I hope that, you know, if there's a good summer of people getting out and playing it, not only at events, but, you know, generally people have a little bit more free time. You know, they're able to really sink their teeth into it and get into it. That maybe it has enough staying power to sustain interest even while people are waiting for other things, or God forbid, an actual new line of models, maybe a new faction, you know, whatever might come our way. So it's really, really cool. And it's nice to be, I don't know, early to the party, so that way we can really enjoy this ride, because it's been fun so far, and it should only get a little bit better, I think.
That would be a great segue into talking about the fact that we are so early to the party that I hadn't realized how early we are. You know, I'm 3 full GTs down, two full GTs down. I don't know if it's 2 or 3, with a third one.
At least 3, yeah.
3 down.
Because there's one. I think there's been at least 2 since me, right? I think there's a 4th coming. Right?
Yeah, there's this weekend coming. So if you're watching this hopefully you're watching this on Tuesday. You might be watching this on Wednesday. Then this weekend coming, I've got another sold out 24-person Old World GT, 2 days. And then the weekend after, I have a team event. So the world's first Old World Teams event in the world,
yes,
which is pretty good. So we get that in the bag. So that's pretty cool. And then, but Warhammer World this weekend.
Not counting the emails we keep getting from the Prime Minister of Iceland.
Are we doing it? I think we might be doing it. That's an idea.
I think regardless of whether or not we actually show up, it's happening. People are just going to be there, and it's going to be like, where's Val and Rob? Like they set this up. It's like, no, they didn't.
That's the reference to the fact that we want to organize the 2025 Old World Team Championships. We want to organize it in Iceland. That's what we want. But yeah, sorry, we're still super early into the edition. More than you know, online people are like, oh, you know, everything's been solved. I'm like, that's not true at all. And Warhammer World just ran a massive event, but it was only 1,500 points. But before we get onto that stuff, I just wanted to talk with you because on 3D printing, but also Lady Elites du Shard being sold out last week. I think a lot of people had some good feedback with our deep dive about the Orcs and Goblins Nomad tribes, but getting those minis is also really hard to do as well.
Yeah, well, I guess they would have been. Was they on the pre-release this weekend? Was that that must have been that was this or are they being shipped? I can't remember. I think they were part of the Elise Duchard launch.
They were
all of the orcs.
They were part of the Elise Duchard launch, and they did. So some stuff isn't sold out. So the stuff that did sell out was the Casket of Souls, the Necrolith Colossus, and then Lady Elise Duchard. So you can still buy the Boar Chariots and the Boor Boys and stuff like that online. So
Boar Boys are still available, huh?
Boor Boys,
interesting.
Boor Boys are still available, but I guess the real question is at £37.50 for 10 Boor Boys, and as you rightly pointed out, 10 is a lot of Boor Boys. To be honest,
it is. It's probably the Old World kits come with anywhere between double and triple the amount of models that you get in comparable kits for the same price. So that's pretty wild.
But yeah, like we both want to talk about the fact that there was, because you've been banging on, beating a drum, some would say, a war drum for some other sculptors, and specifically you want to shout out Avatars of War to look at today?
Yeah. I'd absolutely love to. And for the record, yeah, if it's not a plastic kit, it's kind of sold out in Canada. Just looking at the Orcs and Goblins. Yeah, plastic kits. Obviously, I guess they just were able to make more of them. But yes, especially things like Avatars of War has actually long been one of my absolute favorite sculptors. I think this guy might be a former GW sculptor, maybe back in the ancient past.
I think absolutely true. That is true.
They've actually done their own plastic kits that you get. They've got some cool dwarf multi-part plastic kits. They used to obviously be the old style. They cast resin character models and miniatures, and I guess really embraced creating STLs and the like. Now that 3D printing is a thing, and just do some of the best stuff, which I'd love to show off if you got some.
Sure. Well, the first kit to show off. So these are all available for Avatars of War. You can get them three ways. Whenever I talk about 3D printing, 3 ways you can get these things. 1, you could just pay someone on Etsy to get it done. 2, you can obviously do it yourself, and then 3, your friend. And one of the things that I've seen a lot of people do, especially gaming clubs, is they've ended up as a cooperative. They've all chipped in money, and then someone gets the job of being the 3D print guy or something like that, which is good. And I encourage local game store owners to start being 3D print manufacturers. It's absolutely a viable business model that you could have to increase sales, because some people are, like, obviously those local game store owners normally are anti 3D prints because they want to sell you minis. So if you just join in the party immediately, you don't have to be anti that process, right? Which is positive. But yeah, these Boor Boys, the Boor Boys versus Avatars of War, right? On Avatars of War.
Yeah, so this is interesting because the Boor Boy kit itself, like the plastic Boor Boy kit, I think is probably one of their better kits. It's one of their newer kits, maybe a 7th edition fantasy release. So this is actually be up against one of the not entirely derpy kits. But they're just so cool. The boars are beefy. The Avatars of War aesthetic is a very thick, muscular, mean orc with sort of like, again, the massive skull. They're like I don't know. They're everything I like in an orc boy. You know what I'm saying? A nice slice of fungus. It's I don't know. I really like these guys, and like these guys particularly have me. I've already committed to selling off my existing Citadel kits to replace them with these because I love them so much.
Your love for a thick orc reminds me of a YouTuber we were recently looking at, if I'm honest.
Yes. Yeah. That's a separate podcast that I do
now. Yeah, anyway, so here we go. Orc Boys, Battle Reg. So these are available. And again, these are Avatars of War, which is fun.
And we actually don't have an affiliate link for Avatars of War or anything like that. This is just pure. This is for the love of the game.
Yeah.
But one cool thing that they do is they make these in a multi-part style. So like you can print off all the arms, and these kits are basically a head, 2 arms, and then the legs are part of the boar. so you can mix and match and stuff. But they also do this thing called Battle Ready, where they just print off as, if you're okay with these poses and these weapons, just prints off as one piece, and you're off to the races, which is really, really cool. It can be pretty finicky printing multi-part stuff in a printer.
It can be annoying. I like that they give you the option, because I think that that's exactly what the audience wants. Then there was a bunch of so then there's some others. We're just going to spend 5 minutes looking at these bits, if that's cool with everyone watching at home. And if we talked about this, we might regularly, once a week, once every few weeks, kind of look at some cool additional sculpts that you could play in your armies. But we're looking at the Snotling Pump Wagon, and you've said that this is the only way you would play one.
Yeah, I love this. This thing. Look at it. It's got so many different ways to assemble and put it together, and they're just cool little ass Snotlings. They're fantastic. He also has like a Snotling base, so like a Snotling swarm. They make as well. His Snotlings are great. The poor old pump wagon maybe isn't as cool as it once was, but I mean, it's not terrible. It's not a terrible unit, but just so much fun putting this together.
Yeah, so
Love
good.
it.
Yeah, I think it's good. I really like the Black Orc boss on the War Boar. I think that's the one that really works for me. I think
that
just
boar.
That poor boar. I think I want the orc to be significantly bigger than the boar, and I think that looks really good.
Yes, this is funny. This is a grown man riding a pig. It's it's fabulous.
Speed three. Like absolutely no movement. The other one shout out is obviously because again these for the Nomad War video we did last week. These are pretty hot, right? The goblins on wolf riders.
So to me, this one's the no-brainer. Is the Wolf Riders. I mean, so the existing Wolf Rider kit, although they made it interesting by putting 15 in the Citadel re-release.
Wow.
So you get 15 Wolf Riders, which is not no Wolf Riders. It's not bad value. I'm not gonna lie. Even if you compare, I'm sure they compare pretty well on versus an Etsy creator. But these guys, just from a quality perspective, especially the wolves themselves, are just, they're built for speed. The Gobos themselves are nasty, evil little monsters. I absolutely love it. I also enjoy Avatars of War. They build the models, although there's lots of parts and there's lots of, you can see that they do make them with the fact that these are 3D printed in mind, i.e. there's a little bit more girth to the weapons and stuff, which actually fits in well with fantasy, because there's a lot of like overly sized weapons, just because of the fact that they're older designs and miniatures. They're not as spindly. I really, really like these guys. The multi-part kit on this is also amazing, because there's just so many different options. You can give them all, bow and arrow. They have tons of really cool heads. You can like kit bash a really awesome shaman out of the multi-part kit of this. It's great. I've been an Avatars of War patron since at least 2.5 years. So I've been getting all of these as they dribble out.
One of the things I forgot completely is I played Old World last week as well, which is great. I played against a Nomad War also. I completely forgot.
I don't think I put that together.
Yeah. I played against a Nomad War on Thursday. Shout out to Oscar from Peru, 300 taps of potato, and it was super fun. We had a good game. He's ambushing. He had the special characters so that the Goblin Wolf Riders would come on a 3-up, and they didn't arrive until they didn't arrive till turn 4, which he still failed the roll on turn 4. And I was like, just bring them on, bud. And I was just like, bring them on. Like, let's get this sorted and bring them on. We had a good time. I think I really, really enjoyed it. But yeah, it was super interesting. But I was playing. It was like his first or second game, and I was playing what I want to be my event GT list. So it's probably like a little overtuned as it was, but it's still, I think it ended as a draw. So
not too shabby. But also that tells you about what's. That's the thing about ambushing, is you can definitely fail a 4-up, but you certainly could fail a 3-up too. So yeah, there you go.
100%.
C'est la vie. Ones and twos, baby.
Yeah, it was a good time though, and I quite enjoyed it. And then Poison sounded great until he started moving and shooting with his wolf riders. I was like, and then was still at long range. I was like, it's actually not as good as you think. So small arm shooting, not that great. The Boor Chariot as well is something from last week, which I think is a hot take. Especially with the dwarf potentially on there, but this looks great as well because I really Orcs and Goblins fans don't get me, but I would never give money for the current Boor Chariot that they're selling.
The current Boor Chariot with the tiny little piggies is a bit of it's not great. This, however, I think is great. Both of their chariots, both the Orc and the Wolf, and the Goblin Chariot, I think are phenomenal. Even these Orcs kind of you don't have to do anything to them. They kind of look like black Orcs to me, if that's what you want for your nomads. And again, because they have lots of different options, you could probably find yourself different things in Avatars of War if you want to change up the drivers, give them different heads or what have you. So yeah, these are. What more is there to say? Look how spiky, like that looks like a Tusker charge. This looks like it has impact hits. You would not want to get run over by these guys. Whereas the other little piggies, you'd be like, oh, little piggies.
Yeah.
On the Citadel kit. Also, busted. Something to note about Avatars of War. Rob does not care about this, so you can tune out, listen to some drum and bass for a second, and talk to the scale nerds for a moment. Avatars of War out of the box, I think is closer to that sort of more modern GW scale, the sort of that 32 millimeter style. So you can see this thing is barely fitting on its chariot base. It's actually hanging off the back and in front of it quite a bit, as it should. So I usually print my Avatars of War at about 85%. So that gets them somewhere between the old scale and what would a modern scale be, and hopefully that means that they're all going to wind up being they're going to wind up looking okay no matter which way things go as things get re-released. That's my view.
This is our like destruction of the church moment. This is we go two different ways. Like I'm such a 32 mil stan. You're such a like between, like what are you, like a 30 mil, like between 28 and 32?
I try and split the difference because again, like I realized, like I tried to scale everything properly, like to the 28 millimeters sort of size when I first started 3D printing, and it's impossible because if you scale a properly proportioned 32 millimeter model to 28 millimeters, you get very tiny heads and tiny hands compared to your heroic, like Citadel style 28 millimeter model. They still don't look right. I think the only way to do it in a way that kind of has that verisimilitude is to sort of try and pick it somewhere in the middle, which is what I like to do.
All right, perfect. Well, okay, so there's that, and then there's a couple of other little cheeky bits that they've got. They've got a Goblin Wolf Chariot, which is really hot, especially compared to the Games Workshop one, which is very yikes. Very yikes. And they've got a fun Grom the Paunch model as well.
So actually, this is a little Easter egg. I'm pretty sure Grom the Paunch comes with the Goblin Chariot if you buy it. So if you buy the STL, Grom the Paunch is there. And actually, there's a third wolf that they actually will add to it, that you can add to it instead of the spikes in the middle. Actually, it still has the spikes. It's just that wolf fits in that middle part. And you can have the BDSM Gobbo on the front if you like. I don't think you have to have them. So yeah, it's but like the wolves on this I think are sort of built for speed. And actually what I did was I took because I really do love the old Goblin Chariot. I think it's one of my favorite models. Because it was one of the first models I remember seeing that was sort of dynamic. Like they looked fast, except the plastic wolves are just sort of standing. So you have this chariot of like with these goblins like holding on for dear life, and then being pulled by two wolves out for a leisurely stroll in the forest. And it always like caused my brain to break. So I actually took these wolves and I put them on the old chariots, and that's what my Goblin Chariots are. Yeah. So it's I really do like it. But I love the little lookout tower it's got. And again, you can change it up using their other goblins if you want to put different riders and things on it.
Yeah, definitely. And don't forget, with modern resins, because it's been brought up in the chat, with modern resins, you're going to be able to like get some very sustainable models. I know there's definitely a fair point that back in the day, the original 3D sculpts would be a pretty weak source physically, but definitely nowadays with modern resins, you can get very survivable 3D prints, and they will last you a long time, which is nice, which is what you want from something you spend a lot of time painting.
So, like, the thing is, though, like, I would say it's very caveat emptor on this one, in the sense that go out and, if you're printing yourself, 3D printing is a hobby and a hobby. It's not too bad. It doesn't take over your life or anything like that, but there is a learning curve. And I think for me, the two biggest learning curves were definitely getting the scale that I liked the best. Like I have probably still printed more minis that I wound up throwing away because I didn't nail the size right for myself. And then two, a lot of like those, like that Goblin Chariot was maybe one of the first models I actually printed. And like, if I tried to dry brush it, it would have, like, anything on it just snapped off. Like I printed like the brittlest minis of all time. And so, like, doing the research, finding resins that are designed to have a bit of bend to it. There's a lot of like ABS style resins out there. People talk about blends, but there's lots of creators who you can look up, and you can find folks who do have like great options for specifically miniatures. Because I think a lot of it used to be about a trade-off between sort of like the sharpness and detail that a resin could hold, and its like durability, and that trade-off doesn't really exist anymore. And the second thing is, if you're buying off of Etsy, do not buy something for $100 or whatever you're going to spend without grilling that person about what resins they're using. Because it's very possible if they're using like a very cheap resin, you're going to get a model kit that is just going to turn to dust. So make sure that you're asking very clearly, what are you using, and make sure that's part of it. Because otherwise, you'll buy one STL or one 3D print, you'll think they all suck, and that's just not the case.
Yeah, buying from Etsy is like a little risky, but like also more importantly, you got to remember, if you are paying, it's not going to be that, buying from Etsy is not going to be that much cheaper than getting a model from GW, because it's just labor that you're really paying for, not necessarily materials and anything. But the main takeaway I would probably have for everyone is that I think that was it. There was going to be something else, but I can't remember what it was. I was going to make a point, but I lost it. It was something.
Just like it is a developing technology. People probably see me huffing on this thing every now and again because I have a love-hate relationship with vaping. I'm currently on a love jag, and eventually my dreams will become too vivid, and I'll need to stop. But like when I first started vaping, like this was like something that you would have to buy. You would buy like basically the mod was a base, and then you would have a tank on top of it, and then you'd have to pour your juice in there, and there's a coil, and you'd have to change your coils. It was like a hobby, like being a vapist, a vaping enthusiast. Was something that you had to actually invest time in, and they had those big massive clouds and all that. But over time, it evolves, to get to the point where now it's like the iPod of vaping. Like, this is something that is actually, I mean, it's not great, but this is disposable. I don't even refill this anymore. You buy this off the shelf, and out of the box, it works. There's no effort required. And I think 3D printing will get there. It's still not quite there. It's still very much a sort of a hobbyist enterprise, which is why I think you can have lots of, people able to make a little side hustle or a full business printing on Etsy and stuff. So definitely reward the people who do it well.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, just let us know. And if you do end up being like, I bought some from this guy, those things. Okay, so the cool thing, the one place 3D printing isn't allowed, there we go, there's my segue, is Warhammer World, where you also can't play with the Renegade faction. So this weekend we saw our first example of what a official Games Workshop tournament would look like for the Old World being held at Warhammer World. Like we talked about earlier in the show, 60 players attended the event. I think it was about 60 players. It was only 1,500 points, so 1,500 points. And we've got some data, which is pretty cool. So we'll talk about this a little bit. Well, you know what? Before we even look at the meta stuff, the most interesting thing, Val, is exactly what you were talking about earlier. It wasn't just a straight rulebook event. It was 1,500 points, and it was comped. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, it was rule of 3. They went straight rule of 3. So I'm waiting to see if they do a 2,000 point event as a follow-up. Do they stick with rule of 3? Because that's pretty harsh, even for some of the core factions. But yeah, they went straight to a rule of 3. They did not bother with you know, seeing out of the box what it would be like if there was unrestricted ability to you know, bring lots of, you know, single unit models, go for that sort of activation lock style list. So that was really, really awesome to see. And it also, I think, kudos to those guys for doing it, because I think it was almost the same week, if not the week after, we did sort of our square-based comp, the square-based standard. And, you know, we didn't get a ton of flack for it, but there was still enough of a reaction that was like, it's too early. How do you guys know? You know, you can't possibly know that this is something that needs to be changed. And then Warhammer World did their 1,500 points, rule of 3, and that kind of became acceptable immediately. I think that kind of made it so that there wasn't a lot of the sort of conflicting events. Most events I've seen do have some form of a restriction. A lot of them have just followed and gone straight rule of 3. But I think we're probably right to not restrict core as much, especially when you're using renegades. So yeah, I think it's great.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's particularly good, but also not awkward, but fun, because we had both rules designers, so JTY,
yes.
JTY and Ben, playing at the event, which is also cool. So not only like is it rule of 3, the actual rules designers and writers were playing at the event, and I got to say, I really love that. I think the fact that they were playing at the event is super cool.
This reminds me a little bit. I had a dear friend who he grew up. There was this like dip that he really like, a chip dip, sorry, a crisp dip that he really, really liked when he was growing up, and he couldn't buy it anymore. And he started a company, and it had like this very specific texture. It was like ricotta cheese almost. And like, but he went through like business hell, like of like developing an entire business, industrially like producing quantities of this dip, because if you know, you're making a dip for your house versus a supermarket, those are two different approaches. And it was a years-long process. And we were drunk one night, and I was like, dude, why did you go through all of this? And then he turned to me and goes, I just want to be able to get the dip. And I was like, you mean like at like cheaper, or like so you could buy it at cost? I was like, no, I just want to be able to go to the grocery store and buy the dip. And I'm wondering if this is all just because JTY wanted to go to a Warhammer tournament. Like, he was just the whole thing is just like, I just really want to be able to go to a Warhammer fantasy event at Warhammer World every now and again. I'm going to put this entire company through hell so that I can go. So that I can go to a Warhammer event.
I mean,
and sometimes that's all it is.
It could be even sweeter, right? It could be even sweeter because his wife also went to the event, right?
Oh, it's a family affair.
No. So it could be she might have one day been at home 5 years ago, and she could have been like, "Do you know what, JTY?" I assume that's what she calls him. Do you know what? I'd love to go to a fantasy event at the old at Warhammer World. And then he was like, "Would you, darling? Would you?" He's like, "Yeah, I would." And he was like, "No problem." And then
Cue montage.
Cue montage. I absolutely adore that's the origin story. Now, if anyone asks me why the old world came back, I'll be like, because of love.
I mean, that much is obvious at some level. It is 100% a labor of love. Again, all the things we like about Warhammer wouldn't exist if GW was a sane company. So as much as we rag on them sometimes for their very questionable decisions, their questionable decisions are the best part. So I'm really, really happy that JTY achieved his long con and was able to go play in an event and didn't boycott it because there was rule of three, and that wasn't his design intention.
Yeah, exactly. And also didn't override it as well. We didn't say you can't do that. So, and also shout out to Voltan Ignatio in the chat, who was at the event, who said that he played JTY at the event, and
nice.
And that JTY cracked a smile once when they were playing. So
unconfirmed reports. Unconfirmed
reports of a smile.
Also, I wanted to in our FAQ reactions vid, I need to issue a correction because I think we misunderstood the nature of that FAQ. The FAQ was like, if you mark your unit and you move it and then move it back, is it a take back? And does that count as a take back? And they said absolutely yes. And we read that as in you couldn't do it. On the contrary, what that FAQ actually meant was, no, totally, that's a take back. You're allowed to do that. You can take that back. So it was actually the opposite of what we thought. So we were wrongly cruel to JTY's FAQ and misrepresented the facts. And buried deep in this podcast, I hope he hears our humble retraction. But yeah, no, so you can totally do that.
So we do have some pictures from the event, so for everyone to see at home. So again, if you listen to the podcast, this won't be very viable. I'd say that the terrain is it's not stunning as a start, but we did hear from again one of the attendees that they said that they announced during the end of the ceremony, they were like, we are working on better and more terrain. So,
lovely.
They announced it, and we did get double hills, 2 forests, and 2 buildings, which is what if you go and look on the honestwargamer.com, if you do go and look on the honestwargamer.com, we do have terrain maps which are free to download if you would like to, which
quite reminiscent, aren't they, Rob?
Yeah, which uses the square-based system, so SBS for the terrain picking system, the TPS. So you can do this, and there are some cards you can download and use, which are very similar: 2 hills, 2 buildings, 2 forests, which is good. You can go do that. But yeah, they look fine. But again, I would consider. I know the events team. I know the events team personally, and I know that they are understaffed and under-resourced. You would expect Warhammer World to be the glittering. You would be like, whoa, this makes me feel like I'm in Bretonia as I'm playing the game. And unfortunately, because of just the under-resourcing that department is in, you're never going to get that from a Warhammer World experience, which is a real shame. And will always be a shame. But that doesn't mean that, eventually some pucky TO can't eventually make that a reality. It just probably will never be Warhammer World, which is not because they don't want to, it's because they're not physically or financially capable of doing so, which is obviously ludicrous for the people that made the decision, but there we go. I'm trying to defend the events team because I know for a fact that they would love it to look stunning, obviously.
I mean, that wasn't like an embarrassing terrain set at all. I get what you're saying. Like, the context is the Disney World of Warhammer. Couple things I'll take away from this. Looks to me like this is speculation. That looks to me like one of the not like a recently created fortified manor. But if I had to guess, the Witch Fate Tour and those hills were more recently produced. So maybe that's hinting at them having these things in production again. Maybe we'll get the old Warhammer terrain kits back someday soon. That'd be cool.
Yeah, but interesting. As I understood it, they always got terrain made in China. That's where those terrain kits were made, or at least modern terrain kits past 10 years or so. Maybe those are older, but definitely modern terrain kits were all made in China. And they've stopped basically all production from like mini production from over there because of import costs, but also other stuff. So maybe we'll see that return. I don't know. So yeah, we had the event. That was the train. That's what it looked like. The next bit of information we've got coming from the Old World event is the meta representation, which is cool. So this is a count, and don't forget, it's a massive event, 60 players. And the most popular faction by far was Warriors of Chaos, second Bretonnia, third Tomb Kings. And I think the easiest takeaway from this is those are the most available miniatures to get.
Mm-hmm.
Like those...
that would certainly be the most accessible. Also, Warriors of Chaos probably just would have also, in combination with that, been an army a lot of people would have had on the shelf. So if you have any sort of reawoken enthusiasts out there, very popular. Warriors of Chaos is always a popular, kind of the Space Marines almost of fantasy, I would say, just from like their accessibility and lower model count traditionally, all that good stuff. I've been surprised in general at the lack of orc and gobos. I'm hoping this release brings more orcs and goblins out to the table, because even just sort of like looking, they do well. That army has been doing well, but you don't see them represented a ton. But overall, like, this is a pretty good spread, considering there's 9 factions to choose from in this restricted format.
Yeah, so none of
it was core only, obviously.
Core only, no legend, no renegade factions allowed. Someone did point out, and I kind of agree, that would get very samey very quick. If you don't bring in the other factions, you also have got you're playing warriors, and sure, playing against 8 other factions is a lot of factions, and many of those factions, like you're playing orcs and goblins, you could be playing easily against a troll horde, a nomad horde, or a regular kind of different orc army. So they can all be different in their own right, absolutely. So the variety does increase a little bit, but it's a little bit of a shame not seeing those in the mix. I'm just going to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, just play devil's advocate. Not that I'm defending this boneheaded choice to not have all the factions, but even with a representative, it was 60 players, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, if the number one faction is 12, there's a chance you didn't even play Warriors of Chaos. Like a decent chance that if you were one of the other factions, that you would not have run into a Warriors of Chaos player. This is not like a crazy concentration in any particular faction. Which is cool. Now, obviously, as you get up the tables, if you went undefeated, I would suspect you're running into Tomb Kings and probably Warriors of Chaos. I don't know what the results were, but if you were just sort of winning one, losing one, winning one, losing one, there's a good chance you didn't repeat a lot of factions, and that's nice.
Yeah. There's a really interesting fact that I'm talking with Rob in the chat about, and that I'd like to get to when we get to the event results, because there is a spicy fact, especially in the UK. But I'll bring this up in a moment because the results are really funny. But there is a spicy fact. But yeah, I would say it's a little bit unsurprising that Empire of Man isn't very popular. I would say that's got less to do with model availability, and I would say it's got lots to do with that book being very uninteresting to me. So I can't really. Whereas Beastmen being quite popular in there, I think dwarfs. Like I've said this already. You might say, for a very specific reason,
Beastmen Brayherd's the most popular, regardless of what everyone else took.
How come?
JTY played Beastmen.
Oh, JTY did play Beastmen, and that's why it's easily the most engaging book, I think.
That's also why it's not in AOS anymore.
Yeah.
He was like, nope, this is mine.
JTY did it specifically. Yeah,
JTY did this.
Yeah, Beastmen more popular because they're just a more engaging book to play. Empire of Man just not as engaging to play. But anyway, yeah, Warriors, I'm unsurprised that they're very popular because they're also easy to put together. All those models are available, like you said. So yeah. Now, if we go and look at the event results, which I do have available, we got 3 draws at the top of the system. 3 draws. What's really fun about this is I've ran 2-day events, so 2 2-day events, and this is the 3rd 2-day event in England. And so far, not a single player in the UK has gone 5-0. We've only had 4s and draws. which is like
that's fair. That's
fair. And in the world, there's only been 2 other 2-day events, and both of those did have 5.0s. So they were both in Sweden, and they were both by orcs and goblins.
Okay.
So, which is because this weekend also we had Fantasia Fanatic as well, and again, Orcs and Goblins took the event. So
Fantasia Fanatic played. No way! This is one of my favorite 40K events from my Stat Center days. Oh hell yeah!
Yeah. So yeah, Fantasia. So Marcus Usling. So I don't know if it was Marcus that won last time, but there's only been 1 Old World 5.0. Sorry, 2 Old World 5.0s, both in Sweden. So Sweden absolute closers, and they were always with Orcs and Goblin tribes. So it's a little hot take there, which I think is interesting, because I think like there's some. I don't know how there are some stats aggregate websites which are just putting out, in my personal opinion, nonsense numbers, which are not based on anything approaching reality, and so you start to see something fairly interesting from some of this, I think.
Well, I mean, in their defense, they are heavily noted as these are pretty nonsense, but it's still fun.
Then why would you put them out? I can't. Sorry, this will be like. Do you know what? I'm not even going to talk about it. It's fine. You carry on.
All that matters.
I'm with you.
I will. So I will. No, you don't have to be with me at all. You don't have to be with me. Devil's advocate on that, because I had the same gut reaction. But I would say that it gets people talking. It gets people arguing, and it creates engagement and interest. And I think they've done a good job of saying this includes a lot of 1-day events. Because, like, for example, there's a 1-day event in Quebec that infamous Canadian tournament organizer Danny went to, and like that meta, I would love to be talking about. The lists that were on display there were, these guys are playing like they were like, you could already see a shift to a lot of MSU style armies, but it was a 1-dayer. It was 3 rounds, so you don't know how that would have all settled out in a full 5-round event. So it's like, again, grain of salt, but it's still really interesting nonetheless, because what else do we got right now, right? Like, check your event privilege, Rob. Not everyone's got 5-day 2-day events with 5 rounds. A lot of people are still assuming no one wanted to do 2 days. So
I completely understand, and I really don't want to come off as an arsehole on this point. So like, I'm willing to back up, but seeing as you have been intimately involved in 40K stats, like literally doing a show on it, and I have done the Age of Sigmar stats. Well, not I have done them, but I've been presenting them and been part of the process of them for years. Like, there's a certain amount of so I have a lot of personal responsibility when I present stats. When I do Age of Sigmar, because a lot of people emote from those stats quite heavily. Like, they'll be like, my army is rubbish and I'm never going to play the game again. And obviously, that's an overt reaction, but that's just how some people feel when they see the data presented. And so, even when we have a lot of data, like this weekend alone in Age of Sigmar, it was our biggest event for Age of Sigmar in the past year, and Age of Sigmar events have been growing like year on year. From 2022 to 2023, we had a 50% uptick. 50% is a massive growth. Yeah, it might have been bigger. Was it 100%? I can never really remember when it doubles. Something, whatever. It exploded. And it's continuing to grow. So, even then, though, I try and take a lot of responsibility when I present the stats, because it's super important that, I give context. If an army's too good, I explain why it's too good, or where that data is it coming too good. Rob, who supports me in that, does some really good data stuff as well. For instance, with Age of Sigmar currently, one of the major issues is mission selection. So several of the armies are just too good on the more popular missions. Whereas if you literally turned mission selection on its head, it wouldn't fix the game. Not that the game is bad. The game's in a really good place, healthy wise, but it would bring down some of those overperformers into the middle bracket. And so, lots of that data really needs to be looked at properly and worked through properly, and then not just a graph. And so my strong statement, I apologize, because I'm sure there's lots of people out there who are keen to put numbers together. You're just presenting data which other people then will use as fact online, and then that's really unresponsible. That's probably the right way to describe it. Like,
well, I mean, the specific site we're talking about, Warhammer, is literally aping the meta, what is the Warhammer community? Meta Watch articles, which do so beyond the data behind it. It's just a straight win percentage, which really does tell you nothing. Like based on like just to tell you more, like to dive a bit more into what Rob just said. Context is everything. So like you might have like a high win percentage army that loses the first round every tournament and never actually wins anything, like from a 5-round perspective. You might have data coming from events that are 1,500 points, like the one we just looked at Warhammer World. It's 1,500 point, not even a full sort of standard army. One dayers, all that kind of stuff buried in there. So yeah, unpacking and context is key. I'm pretty sure all the data is available, but I know what you mean. Like people are going to take that stuff out of context, and that is always going to be the danger around it. But at this point, I'm willing to give it a pass, just because people arguing and talking about it, hopefully is more at this point. If an army's underperforming, I'd like to think a lot of it, like some of the reaction's going to be, it's like, well, because those guys are idiots, I know how to do it, and that's sort of part of what I want. Part of what I want to see is that people, people see this stuff and they want to go out and find a way to make things work. Like for example, we're looking at Chaos Dwarfs for a deep dive, and in reading the Chaos Dwarfs closely, that army feels like it's in tough to do well. Like that's my initial gut on it, right? And so like going out, to find out what the interesting things people are doing, I think is the next step. But if I was a dwarf player or an empire player, I would be seeing some of these early results and saying, okay, what can we do? What are different people coming up with, spitballing? And that's where you get really cool faction focused communities. Like that's in 40K, one of the first things I ever organized was like a group of tournament going orc players, because orcs sucked, and didn't win GTs ever, because like they were never the faction that the top players picked, and we would work really hard to try and find ways to play better and all that kind of stuff. So from these ugly and maybe very surface level stats, maybe you actually wind up getting full communities growing out of them to try and overcome them. But you're right, it can be the opposite too.
Yeah, the important part that I would love to see is not the event results stuff, because again, my major takeaways from having random events with an event coming up is that the only real takeaway is that everyone's been having a really great time. That's been my major takeaway, and so I'm a little conscious again of that personal responsibility. Other people don't have to accept that responsibility on themselves, and they might just do stuff so you get clicks and fights and rage and arguments and discourse, I think is the word we're looking for. But like for me personally, I think that like I would like to have some personal responsibility when I do engage in that level of discourse, because I know it actually affects people on the ground, people's hobbies, people's things that they do is an important thing. And as soon, if you're halfway through painting up, I don't know I haven't looked because I know the data's not there. I know I have data. I would say if you were asking me now what is the best army in the game, it's Orcs and Goblins, country mile, 100% best army in the game. For win rates. But like I don't know what is considered quote unquote the worst, but if someone was in a WhatsApp group telling you, haha, your army sucks, and you're halfway through painting it, you're already that's already a lot of motivation to start wanting to paint. And if you're halfway through, you're like, well, why the fuck am I painting this then? You will stop. Like people will stop, and people will you will lose people out the hobby, and that's super sad to rob them of that experience.
Yeah, I guess it can be. Yeah, absolutely. But getting more people interested in events. I think one thing that I do love about the fact that there immediately were being counters. And by the way, that site I mentioned is not the only one. There are people I've noticed on YouTube doing, like sort of weekend recaps and talking about tournaments immediately. Like, you know what I mean? Like that to me is the bigger, like the thing that kind of blew my mind was just like, these are things that took 40K years to develop. It's sort of like in some places, like they never really built like landline telephones. They just skipped straight to cell phones because obviously, why would you ever, if you have cell phones and you don't have telephones, why would you bother? You would just go straight to the new technology. With Old World, like we're just immediately getting this sort of like self-analysis, and again, like we'll see if if it winds up being a positive or a negative in the fullness of time. But I just think it's cool that people care, and that the conversation has continued. Like we said at the beginning, right? Like it sure feels like interest is still strong, and I think one of the neat things is that holding that mirror up, even as basic as the analysis might be right now, just because of the nature of how many results we actually have to work with and the quality of those results, we're not seeing a single army crushing everything. We're not seeing the same like everyone bringing the same thing. We haven't wound up in a solved meta by any stretch.
Whoa, and, we can create like we can create a hot title now. Orcs and Goblins broken. The only 250s. That's, you want the discourse, bud? We got it right here. Yeah, look at you. You're using your Orcs and Goblins privilege to push down the fact. Look at you. This is nepotism.
But what I do enjoy is that pardon me. What I do enjoy is that we could say something like that, and it would be something that we could just argue about. And it's not solved, right? Like that's what I'm getting at. Is it's not a solved meta, and I think most people wouldn't yet be willing to give up on their hopes and dreams, because ultimately I think the game plays, right. Like the game, there are lots of armies that it feels like could win an event, and so far they also haven't been the big bads. I don't know how many dragons were represented in that top tier of the event lists at Warhammer World. Got to think there were a few bone dragons and chaos dragons in there. But certainly at the 2,000 point level, we're not seeing utter dominance of like the big monsters. We're seeing people who have learned to, or are taking armies that can deal with that threat having success. So like that to me is great, and speaks to a healthy game that's worth playing, and hopefully that continues to get reinforced as we start seeing the bigger events and start developing and start having a sample set that includes enough events to see which ones are always at the top, because that's the real measure, I think, is of like which armies are good, is which ones consistently are able to go 4-0, 5-0. That's the real measure of a strong army.
Yeah, I agree. Do you want to, just before we kind of wrap the show up, should we look at our second ever 5-0 in Old World 2-day events?
Hey guys,
and it's all your people. This is Marcus Usling from Fantasia Fanatic, and he was running a Black Orc War Boss on a Wyvern with the Talisman of Protection and the Trollhide Trousers. Then we had an Orc Weird Knob who's a level 4 on foot with the Ruby Ring, Idol of Gork, and the War Magic. A Black Orc Boss in plate armor, Standard Bearer on foot, Charm Shield, Trollhide Trousers, and the War Banner. Night Goblin War Boss, and then on Giant Cave Squigs, so 2 of those, 89 points. That feels like a steal.
Yeah.
18, a block of 18 Black Orc Mob, 24 Night Goblins with 3 Fanatics, 24 Night Goblins with 3 Fanatics, and then 5 Black Orc Mob, and then 1 River Troll and 1 River Troll with 2 Doom Diver Catapults and a Goblin Rock Lobber.
Hanging in tough with those war machines. He's not moved off the war machines. That's awesome. Also love the solo trolls. I think that's something you called out way back when, as sort of a great little control piece.
Yeah, I like the solo trolls. I think they're great, especially with great weapons. Good.
Yeah, just a nice little piece of moderately intelligent meat rambling around, getting in trouble and getting in the way.
I think what I like about the Great Weapon River Trolls is like everything's swinging before them, right? Like even on the charge, probably something's swinging before them. But if I charge you with a River Troll and that like in the flank, and then at the same time charge you with the Black Orcs in the front, where are you putting the output? And that just gives me, I think, some free combat res from just like, I'll probably get 2 or 3. Three's probably a bit much, but between 2 and 3 from the single River Troll, giving me that combat res. That's quite a lot in the old world, and because you're focusing your output on the Black Orcs or whatever it might be. So it kind of gives you a bit of a choice, which is, as we've been talking about that MSU multiple small units really starts to mess around with large units, even things like dragons, because they're only getting combat res from so many places, and if you're swinging with other stuff, that's pretty good. It's pretty nice. And the Night Goblin's so good, bro, so good.
Say what was that last thing? What's so good?
Night Goblin's so good.
Oh yes. And the unit here, the unit size is pretty restrained, 24. So pretty smallish. But again, just bringing those triple fanatics as their fanatic delivery systems for 159 points. Like that's gnarly damage output for 159 points. Really fantastic. Let me just see here. Yeah, and then the Black Orc mob. So let's take a look at this. So the Black Orc mob has the big red raggedy flag, so it has +1 combat res. And then he brought a Black Orc big boss as a standard bearer with a war banner, which is +1 combat res. So I'm assuming stacking some pretty serious combat like static res onto that Black Orc mob, which is also going to be dealing some delicious damage itself. So pretty cool. I think that is really, really cool.
It definitely gives you like a meat of the army in the Black Orc mob. Flanks, you've got those Night Goblins with the Fanatics, which are solid. You're shooting stuff over the top, so your opponent's gonna have to move towards you, because you got a big counter charge piece with the Black Orc War Boss. You've got all the spell support and the spell denial from the Weird Knob, which at 240 points I think is a bargain. It just feels like it's got all the tools there. I like the addition of the War Machines. I feel like that makes the tempo be very much geared towards the Orc player. They're like, I'm shooting at you. You didn't bring any War Machines. And they're like, oh, okay, I'm coming. Fanatics. Fanatics!
There's a lot of damage here. Also, the for a crafty player, like those Night Goblin War Bosses on Giant Cave Squigs are going to be really annoying pieces. The Giant Cave Squig itself is pretty nasty in close combat, so that's another thing that can be used to go again do things like get a flank or a rear charge, or deal with redirectors from the opponent, or just hide somewhere and be useful late game. A lot of really cool things to use in this list.
Super fun. I loved it. I think it's great. I think like as a show, I think that ties us up. I think that puts us in a really solid place, like a bit of a breather. And I think a good question to ask the audience, if you are watching or you're one of our Discord or our Patreons, like, where are you at with the game as is right now? Because I feel like we're just at the beginning of getting it on the tables and starting to understand it. Well, that's how it feels to me. And some people are still in the process of getting them all produced, right? I think that's kind of where we're at. And then we've still got, and then what an incredibly exciting future. So many armies to come out, so many potentially new armies, new kits, new ways to play. Like, am I expecting to see like the Badland Orcs in lists? I'm not sure. Maybe. They're not bad, not orcs, sorry, ogres. Because I kind of rate ogres at the moment, right? So I think we're in such a good place as a game in the community, I would say.
I think it's really cool, and the Arcane Journal's coming out. Especially, I can't wait to see what dwarves get in that Arcane Journal. We know that the OP pony card is coming, and things like Empire and dwarves, both of which feel maybe a little boring to play right now. If they get the injection of life that an army book that didn't even need it, like Orc and Goblins got, then like some of the things that maybe aren't feeling great right this second will start to feel real good. We'll see. I think it's just so much fun, man. I'm so excited to be, like I said, on this ride. It's fun. It's interesting, and the summer is going to be really cool.
Yeah, it's going to be super cool. And if you are an event organizer or an event attendee, please do drop us in the comments or find a way to let us know about your upcoming events, especially if they're not being hosted on something like Best Coast Pairings. If you're using something old like Tawny Keeper, whatever any of those other silly things are, then not that they're silly, I apologize, but like, those other platforms, let us know, because we'd like Excel spreadsheets. We'd like to know where and when they're happening, and kind of just add that, because we can only know about what's happening in the world by you letting us know, right? We do go and try and find out.
And this is actually something that we, so you do obviously on the AOS stats. Back in the day, we did with 40K Stat Center. One of the most important things right now for events to do is have your lists posted somewhere. Make sure you're collecting lists. Make sure that they're being, somewhere accessible, so that way good analysis can be done. It's one of the easiest things you can do for the event going community is to encourage your TO, collect lists, use BCP, whatever platform you like. If it is a collated PDF, that works too, just as long as it's somewhere that can be gotten, because that's really the information that's necessary. It's cool to have that list of armies that won at the 1500 point event, but we don't really know what actually happened aside from the top line information. So the more good information we can get, the less we're grasping at straws, and the more we can shout out people doing cool things and finding neat new solutions and advancing this game forward. So yeah.
100%. Okay, well, yeah, it's been a great show. Loved it. Some fun info in there. And I'm really excited about the future. Really excited. I'm going to try and still trying to resist the urge to do my Chaos Dwarf army, redo my Chaos Dwarf army. But I'm going to put some ogres down again as a kind of elite infantry quick play.
Did you print off 1 billion Chaos Dwarves in October?
I think it was even before October. I did.
Yeah. Yeah.
I did.
So you have them. They're standing by.
Yeah, I just need a couple of the war machines, and I'm like, am I going to do it? I don't know. I don't know right now, especially with the rumors that the Chaos Dwarfs are coming out from Citadel, so I'll just be able to cross them over. But I think if I want, the thing about the 3D print ones, and now I'm gonna sound like the 5th edition high elf player. I want the Forge World ones from Tamrakhan. Those are the ones I want. I can get recasts. I'll probably just get those because you can't buy them. So just for everyone at home. Otherwise, I would try to buy them. But so those are the ones I might try and get, because those are Chaos Dwarfs to me. I'm not big hat era guy. I'm like, okay, that's Chaos Dwarfs to me. I fell in love with Chaos Dwarfs reading Tamrakhan. So that to me is my one. So I guess I'm one of those. I'm one of those guys. I don't know what you call them.
Aficionado? Come on, man. It's whatever put their hooks in you. I think that's awesome. Even the third party stuff I like, it just to me just is a better version of the GW stuff I like, right? So, I totally get. And the big hat dwarves tend to be called back a lot more when you look at the third party stuff for Chaos Dwarves. So anyway,
yeah. Plus I've nailed. I think I've nailed my Warriors list. The only thing I need to do is get a couple of units of Marauder Horsemen from the new releases, and I've nailed it.
Oh, those guys look good.
Those
guys look good.
They look good. All right. Well, if you have enjoyed the show, please do let us know in the comments. That'd be great. And then thank you to everyone on the Squarebase Patreon for supporting the show, being a part of the community. Yes. I would argue at this point, burgeoning community.
Burgeoning.
We have got limbs that are heavy from the weight of the bow. I don't know how it works. It's hefty, right?
Absolutely. A deluge of enthusiasm, which I always appreciate and hopefully participate in enough. I try and get in there as much as I can.
Yeah. Well, it's been lovely talking to everyone. Thanks very much, and see everyone soon. Don't forget, if you can't be cool, be square-based. Still like that one. Boo. If you got one?
Square Blast.
Square Blast. All right, good. That one's good. All right, sweet. Chat, thanks very much. Be better than cool, be square-based. That one's fine. I don't know about that one. Shout out to 81 Dajal in the chat. is actually John Dale, who won the Warhammer World event this weekend. So shout out to John Dale, who came to one of our 2-day events. I don't know if he was at the same event. I think he was at the second one, not the one you were at, Val. And he's also playing at teams with where the average age of his team is like 64. That's not a joke.
JTY's playing. Great.
Yes, which is great. So congratulations to you, John. You should be super chuffed because John came and I think he had 5 great games, which I was loving. But he also was like, he got some lessons learned at the 2-day event, which is obviously used very well at the Old World, at the Warhammer World event, right? It's pretty cool.
Who knew you can get better? There is hope.
All right, chat. Loads of love. See everyone soon. Thanks very much to Val. Can we all give some love to Val in the chat, please? Make him feel special and lovely. So next week, Squarebase Show is going to be permanently moving to a Wednesday. Day. So if you are a Squarebase fan, it's all going to be on Wednesdays now. Val's got to move his schedule around, so it'll be Wednesdays. Okay? But I'll try and do as many updates as I can, so let people know. All right. Loads of love. See you soon.